Matt, if you could kind of talk about a little bit about your background, how Petszel came about, and just kind of a little background about the company and your company would be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity and taking the time today. I've been in the animal health space for close to 30 years. Years ago, helped manage some veterinary practices around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it was in that period that I was able to identify workflow challenges and that could be solved pretty easily with technology. And so I started about 20 years ago this entrepreneurial journey that is now spanned across 5 startups in areas like telemedicine, pet parent communication software, referral management, getting medical records between general veterinary and specialty referral practices. And then, here more recently, and those, we enjoyed, had a lot of fun being entrepreneurial in startup land, and we got to enjoy, a few exits as well to companies like IDEX and Patterson. So fun on the startup and on the corporate side. You learn certainly a lot in those neighborhoods. But yeah, it was I don't know, about a little over 2 years ago, sitting with a colleague who recognized that we were good at connecting siloed areas of the pet vet ecosystem. And this was an individual who is now a co-founder in the company, Mike Greenberg. And he's like, there's basically zero integration between the point of adoption and pet and veterinary care. And really everything that has to happen in between to make an adoption successful with home acclimation. And so we kind of dug into that, spent some meaningful time with animal welfare organizations, took kind of the landscape of what they were doing currently, which was mostly manual process, folders going to adopters, or at best, a series of emails with lots of attachments, never really delivered in the key moments that mattered. And we looked at it all and said, all right, well, if we build something better and it's directly integrated with your shelter software, would you use it? And that was last year at Animal Care Expo, HSUS Expo in New Orleans. And they're like, yep, absolutely, this sounds wonderful. Today's adopters want an all-in-one experience. They want things at their fingertips. And so we spent most of last year building Petszel, and then we launched it officially in January of this year, kind of a soft launch the first few months of the year, and then things just began to really explode after this year's expo, HSUS Expo in San Antonio, and we're now up over 100 shelters across the country, and just having a lot of fun. And shelters and rescues of all shapes and sizes. It's been really enjoyable working with quite a variety of organizations.
What has the user feedback been? Have you seen some good responses there? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We spend a lot of time getting feedback from our shelter partners, and not just to validate that what they have today works well and that they're happy with it. We've been getting overwhelmingly positive feedback, but also what aren't we doing, and how can we grow the platform? How can we fill other gaps and deliver more value to them? And the animal welfare organizations have been craving something like this that particularly can make the home acclimation period and connections to pet and veterinary care more seamless. So they've really been craving this, and so they're very open to providing feedback and also helping to shape our roadmap moving forward. So a lot of our kind of best ideas, we come up with some good ideas, but some of our best ideas really come from our shelter users. And they've given us the privilege too to talk to pet parents, some of their adopters, which is I think even more important in understanding what the adopter experience is, which has been great to chat with pet parents who previously adopted, perhaps through more legacy flow, and just to get good positive feedback from them on how everything is now, available right on their device, and it's easy to access, whether it's the medical record they're after or an educational resource, or finding their veterinarian, etc.
Yeah, just being able to have everything centralized, and my background is data and IT, and working with different ERP platforms that might be siloed, or different applications where they don't connect and talk to each other, and you try to get them to connect with each other. It's a big challenge, right? So maybe you can talk about all the different data streams that have been integrated into your platform that maybe someone doesn't know about, or that you have now, right? From medical records to, I believe you had said to me before, I don't want to steal your thunder, about recommended veterinarians, for example. Kind of just touch on all those cool aspects that are now in one spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really what it's been all about, is pulling all these disparate pieces and parts to an adoption into one place. And it all really starts with integrating with the shelter management databases. So there are 4 shelter management systems that make up over 90% of shelters and rescues that use software. And we have near real-time data integration with those, right? So that's where your medical record originates, behavioral notes. Of course, that's where ultimately, the adopter information will come from, so you can deliver a personalized experience. And then what we do is, once the pet's been adopted and we've delivered a congratulatory email to that pet parent, we're then able to put that information, along with the fact we know where they reside, and other information. We can deliver shelter preferred veterinary recommendations, shelter preferred trainers, other services, boarding, daycare. The shelters and rescues are our true north. They get to before, they were putting this information in packets, or again, they were getting buried as email attachments. Now it can all be configured where the adopter has everything in one place. They're also able to shelters can configure their partnerships. Many are partnered with nutrition, pharma, insurance, other companies. They can easily configure and embed those partnerships, and worry less about having to explain them during the adoption process, or worry about handing that adopter a piece of paper. So Petszel comes together, really, like you said, from a variety of sources. I think that the core is what we get out of the shelter management system, but then all that ability to configure it across shelter partnerships, not just nationwide, but local partnerships as well, vet trainers, other providers. And other things we do, like embedding the shelter's donation system, so they have other touch points to be able to pet parents know how they can give back, or the ability to give adopters more information on how to join the mission and volunteer and foster and things like that.
Yeah, you're moving away from static documents to dynamic ones where they can update people in real time. Maybe if there is something that happened at the shelter that they needed to be able to communicate, to just new events that they might have going on, engaging with their previous fosters, for example. You touched on being able to also share this with trainers. Can you share, I'm not too familiar, what type of data do trainers typically have right now? How will this help them engage with the animal, right? From a behavioral standpoint, or just being able to access their files, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so when you look at the adoption volume, and you look at some of the biggest challenges post-adoption as pets are acclimating, particularly with dogs, right? With 60% of dogs that end up being returned are due to behavioral issues. And so, that's significant. And so with Petszel, right, we're gathering information post-adoption. There's information that comes right from the shelter management system, general behavior notes, but a lot of what tends to unfold in the home, right, can be different once they're in a new environment. And so pet parents who are engaging with those check-ins and surveys to identify that, this dog is resource guarding, or this dog, it's puppy. It's just got simple puppy issues, chewing, potty training issues, or more significant things. This is a dog that has clear separation anxiety, and so being able to identify those challenges through the Petszel experience, surface some real-time resources right then and there for the pet parent to just kind of de-escalate, like it's going to be okay. Here's some things you can access today, right? Some next steps, and then connecting them with trainers in their area that are shelter preferred, whether they be physical trainers or virtual training platforms, or a mix of both. And then taking that information that we've gathered, the mix of information from the animal's background at the shelter, how they've been acclimating and the data collected there, and getting that to a trainer, they end up being a lot more informed as to what's going on in focus areas as they dive into their training.
Yeah, you can see which one are more long-standing behavioral issues or challenges that they've had versus ones that maybe had popped up after the adoption point, right? That kind of
that's right.
Point what that might be.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Where do you see the platform going in 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, right? What would you like to add on from either different databases, services? Kind of where's the growth do you think you'll step into next?
Yeah, we are really pleased with having reached over 100 shelters and new shelters, that are activating every day. We see ourselves in the not so distant future, being in 500, then 1,000 shelters, and continuing to develop out tools where smaller organizations that, some that may not even be using software at this point can still utilize it, where pet parents can just organically begin to use, right, even for prior pets that were adopted and so on. And there are a lot of other areas that shelters and rescues are seeking help with. Foster support. We have a lot of tools today for adopters that actually translate over to foster support. That's interesting. So we think we need to go much deeper than we are today in behavior support, considering that is such a significant source of returns. And what else can we do to help get ahead of those issues, more directly within the Petszel experience. And just right transparently, we get to do all of this and provide it for free to shelters and to pet parents because the work is sponsored by great industry partnerships, right? Partners that are already today partnered with shelters. And so, right, that'll be of course, a key focus area to put food on our table is helping to power shelter programs across the industry, programs that have been in place for years, but in a far more analog way.
So having it free to shelters makes it really a no-brainer to be able to help kind of streamline where they're going, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with either some that are not digital at all or really legacy systems to try to bring them to the future. It's always a lot of legwork in some cases there. But if for you guys to getting more in the technical side, can they bridge that gap via the APIs and present it in a cleaner interface for everybody and make it more accessible, cleaner to be able to utilize, right? More friendly for people. That's kind of the game changer and where that can go for sure.
Yeah.
That's very cool. It's very cool.
We see deeper connections to, as we our background, the co-founding team has a lot of background in in animal health technology, veterinary practice management systems, and those areas. And we see a day in the not so distant future where that pet parent who needs to establish a veterinary relationship, we're already helping that, right? In the Petszel experience, 57% of adopters within 90 days are booking visits, but those visits should be able to be booked just like an open table reservation or a ZocDoc appointment, and the medical record, which we have, should simply be there when the pet parent shows up at the veterinarian, right? We're making it a lot easier to get it from the point of adoption over to veterinary because it's all there in the post-adoption app. But it should just simply be there when you show up, and those are some of the things that our team has a lot of background and can bring to life.
Especially if somebody moves too, right? You're going from one vet to the next. I certainly have gone through that, and it's like getting their paperwork and having it sent over and understanding the animal's health and what they've been through, right? It's just like our healthcare system, right? And certainly there's been challenges in just our healthcare, but just being able to digitize that and be able to have that data move freely between the sources is a big deal that just hasn't existed either, right?
It hasn't. There's some pretty big hills to climb to really see record mobility in pet care. I've been part of other initiatives that have had limited success in the past, and it has a lot to do with the lack of any data standards in this space, the forcing mechanisms you have on the human side to actually have reached some data standardization on that side. Insurance, right? It's not as significant on the pet health side, but I think we are really uniquely positioned in capturing the origin of that first medical record, and being part of that, being the first part of that chain, if you will, to getting it to a veterinarian, and and hopefully helping systems over there make it more portable as pet parents move around the country.
Yeah, if you can be that initial phase and then create that groundswell where that's kind of the initial part where the data is coming from, and then if they get ingested into their systems, right, you can kind of create that standardization across the board, right, and kind of, say force, but kind of tip their hand and say, hey, look, it's already here. Why not just go that route? And and it's kind of like that critical mass of the tipping scale to be able to do so.
Right.
That's very cool. You could talk about kind of like your biggest successes so far and what you see has been the most rewarding so far that you've seen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we came into this space certainly as startup veterans, and we know we've got background in prior successes, but we came into this space and into the animal welfare realm, also knowing that none of that matters. Like, this is a very different space, a lot of similarities, a lot of overlap, but it's also different in many ways. The challenges that shelters and rescues face, the workflow, very different than many animal health veterinary facilities, and so we really took pause initially and brought some great advisors onto our team. Really got a core group of very progressive, thought-leading shelters, and so I'm really proud of of having done that and what we've managed to learn and the value that we've been able to deliver. This has to be a platform that is just delivering, exceedingly high value for shelters and saving them time. We've claimed from the beginning that we could help reduce returns, and now we're seeing that, right? We're seeing it through direct feedback, but we're also seeing it through data, and it's just really exciting when we can pull data from some of the earlier shelters that implemented, you know, January, February of this year. We can look at their pre-Petszel period and then look at a solid 6 months after implementing. We've got organizations that are down between 20 to 30% in monthly adoption returns. And that's a win-win-win right across the board. That means, right, it means shelters are keeping more pets in homes. They're not boomeranging. Pet parents are very, very importantly being successful. Industry partners, right, very transparently, there's premium food being fed. There's pets that are still insured, right? Everybody wins. And so that has been, you know, particularly over the last month or so, where we've gotten some of these results, and that's been, I think, one of the most validating things for us that we're on the right track.
And what would you say to a shelter listening now about the onboarding process of, you know, seeing this in action to actually be able to implement this, a support system you offer for them to make sure they're stood up properly? What does that look like for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you can have a great team, you can have great tech, and it can all just fall over if it's tough to onboard and implement. And we've done other projects where that's just very apparent, and where, you know, we've seen in prior lives the challenges, particularly whether it's a veterinary practice, an animal shelter. These are like really busy places. They're inundated. They can be emotionally charged places, and right, they got a lot on their plates. So we were very thoughtful. This needed to be simple to onboard, and so to enroll takes about 5-10 minutes. In that process, we're gathering a little bit of the homework right then and there, whether it's because the entire experience is shelter branded. So let's get their logo, let's get some of those assets. And then following that, we can set up, you know, their post-adoption app within a week and a half. It's because we've got quite a few coming on. Very little of their time is needed in that. The only homework, once they've enrolled, is they have to get us their existing adoption packet, the stuff that's going out today by paper or as email attachments. And then they need to get their partnerships identified. So if they have a nutrition partner, or maybe they're partnered with a parasiticide brand or an insurance provider, those sort of things, you know, they need to identify those so we can help amplify, you know, those partnerships in the post-adoption app. All together for, say, the average size shelter or rescue, between enrolling and going live, a few hours of effort. It's pretty straightforward.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
I was expecting to hear a longer number than that. So that's really cool. If they need a support, they have people that can help them. I'm sure they can, you know, they can reach out to just for additional hand holding, right? There's always levels of people who are more comfortable with tech versus others, and just to be able to streamline that process. And then each welcome packet would be different for each shelter, right? So it's customizable, and you can ingest all that in.
That's right. It's the platform. I always like to go with the term that's right, highly configurable. Customization can lead to scale challenges, but they have all sorts of opportunity to configure it to their needs and their branding, their partnerships, their content. That's all really important. And to your earlier comment, we're very high touch from a support standpoint. We've had shelters and rescues that have gone to the site, have never spoken with us. They've onboarded and they've gone live without it. But that's right. But it can happen. We're pretty high touch. We do a kickoff call. We kind of go over any homework. We do a quick 15 to 20 minute actual demo call where we show them once their app's been configured. They have about a week typically in the sandbox, if you will, to just play with it, give us feedback, and within about a week they go live. And once it's live, pretty much set it and forget it. They can always go back. Of course, there's their dashboard where they're looking at adopter feedback and survey results. But as far as the integration, there's no buttons they have to click, no daily care and feeding. Everything that Petszel delivers happens automatically with the shelter software integrations. There's no other software they have to open, no buttons. So it's pretty straightforward.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I covered most of my questions that I can think of along the way. So anything that you want to cover?
No, I think this has been a great conversation. I'd love to maybe hear. Of course, this isn't the first time we've met. We've had some other conversations, but I'd love to hear your perspective on them. I'm excited about where we can take the synergies between SponsorPet and Petszel. So I'd love to hear some of your comments on that before we wrap up.
Yeah. So part of what we're looking to do is also build a foster network, right? So as we grow and we have new users, we want to encourage them to sign up to be a potential foster parent and be able to help standardize that process where nonprofits can come in and kind of search for candidates who have registered, and they can do that across the board or based on geography or preferences from small animals to large animals, to be able to create a database for them. As we both know, that's probably the biggest challenge for nonprofits, right? Is if one animal is placed, that opens up the room for another animal, and it's just a force multiplier within that sense. And how we're looking to kind of change the game is just the way that we target our audience, right? Very much so now, fundraising efforts is very much targeted to one demographic. It's very much on the doom and gloom negative side, and we're really looking to broaden our appeal to 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, to like more of the casual person who maybe thinks like they just like to look at funny dog videos or cat videos or and just that type of content, but hadn't really thought that, oh, I could actually foster an animal for 6 months, right? Because then they would still want to be able to go traveling, right, for a month or two. Maybe they work remote and they don't think it's possible. So this opening the door for them in that sense, I think will be a big deal. It'll be interesting to see how our synergies can overline, where we can kind of multiply our efforts together. I know we talked a little bit about that, but I think that's definitely one area that we want to explore for sure, right? And then also providing an avenue to increase donations that come in for them would be a big part, as I see, right? And then just as we talked about, just other nonprofit partnerships.
Working with your current network of nonprofit partners and growing the network and looking at other ways to deliver value, in what we can provide, and helping to do things like identifying available pets for foster, identifying adopters, perhaps through post-adoption check-ins, and now have shown an appetite for fostering. Maybe I want to foster the next one. I'm part of the mission now that I've adopted, right? I think Petszel, in collaboration with SponsorPet, right, we can do some unique things with our integrations. Shelters struggle to turn adopters into donors, traditionally. What can we do with that ongoing engagement we're now seeing with adopters who are saying that I love my shelter, I feel like I'm part of something, I feel like I'm part of a mission? Well, there are ways you can give back. So I think, across the board, there are synergies there for people like you and I. It's always a matter of like being in the candy shop, which ones to tackle first. But I'm super excited.
And that is a big part. It's like, how do you convert the individuals to donors? And I think it's about building that sense of a group, right? A community together, where it's not just, hey, can you now donate? It's about providing information and things where people can get involved, or just to see what's going on out there, right? Like, animals always bring people together, and people always want to be involved and to support it. And there's just so many untapped demographics and people that just, I think would do it. They just haven't had the right messaging and calls that will resonate with them, right? It's just everybody loves animals, but you're not going to sit there and watch really sad music with an animal that looks like there's a gun to its head. Like if you don't donate, we're going to put this animal down. Where as opposed to providing something positive, it's like, hey, look, there's a local event coming here. There's a yoga event. Bring your dog, do yoga in the park with. Like, there's ways that we can tackle different metro regions and say, here's what's going on in your neighborhood today, right? Come check us out. Come be a part. Meet other people who have adopted animals. It's another way to bring people together. And I think if you can build off of that and strengthen the ties of a shelter and of a nonprofit, and to have people see them more often, right? Because they're kind of invisible unless you're really thinking about an animal, right? People don't really think about all the different other levels of services and offerings that they do, right? From we work with a nonprofit that provides grievance counseling, right? There's some that just specifically transport animals from one state to another. There's a lot of different things that they do that just are kind of invisible to people who think about it. And it's just kind of bringing that more to the forefront, and kind of like what you're doing with integrating a lot more together. I think we could do a lot more good together.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's been we've had some interesting conversations with shelters about some milestone moments that kind of get overlooked a little bit. And from a kind of a donor creation standpoint, I was chatting with a shelter, and I wouldn't have even thought, I was like, we actually have a degree of success in getting donations from pet parents that have recently surrendered, where the pet didn't work out, but they felt so compelled and they're moving or something happened, but they turned into a supporter of the shelter. The fact that our integrations, you can see RTO, return to owner data, right? What a moment, celebrating reunification. There's a clear opportunity for a certain message track, celebrating the moment, of course, making sure they have even better understanding of things like loss prevention, microchipping, GPS calls, various things. It's a milestone moment, though, that they're pretty excited about being reunited at the shelter. And there's these other points where there's opportunities I don't think very many people have even thought of. And I think, thought partnership here between Petszel and Sponsor a Pet, could lead to some interesting test and learn opportunities.
I think that's really cool. Yeah, I've just, it's things like that. We work with another nonprofit that Guardian Pet Trust, where they work with people about having a plan in place if something were to happen to them, right? Where so many people don't have a plan, and then the animal ends up back in the shelter because maybe they don't have anybody else, or the family can't take it on. There's not enough room, right? And having something in place, just like you would from a life insurance perspective, to make sure that your animal that you love is taken care for, right? And it's just not something that people think about, right? And it's just something very simple and quick that they could work on and do. So there's a lot of synergies that we can talk about that would be very cool. That's just to, it's just the change of the nonprofits in the space and their offerings, and kind of all the unique offerings that they have, really, and bringing those forward is very cool to see, right? And even since I've started Sponsor Pet, I've learned so much about that too, right? Where I love animals, but I didn't know about all these different things. So it's like, okay, how can I teach other people about all these different services too? And this is a great way to do so. And I think your platform really, like you said, starts at that ingestion point to be able to educate people while helping them and helping the shelters and the veterinarians along the way. And just like us, kind of tie everything together, which is really cool.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, can't wait to dive in, but appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate the time today as well.